doesn't have substance that you can see, touch, and has parts. And so he's going to interestingly say that the soul is the activity of the body, which is kind of sort of where that goes, right? Because if the body's moving, there's soul in it. Plants don't move quite so quick, but they do have souls. The souls of plants. They take in light, they absorb nutrients, they do things. Some plants move. If you've ever seen Ents in the movie The Lord of the Rings. Home, home. This is a tough group. Nobody's left. Sorry, the jokes are just... No. However, their soul, it's just they have the soul of a plant. And so, we'll get to Aristotle. He is way interesting. The idea then of the soul in Plato seems to come from the East, seems to be the reincarnation idea that Plato picks up. So he must have heard that through... There's all kinds of things, by the way. The Odyssey, the other Homeric epic, right? One astronomer analyzed it and concluded that it's actually based on the Vedas. So that would have been another story that had come to the West from an Eastern source. And what he concluded using, this was years ago, he used his computer to figure out the astronomical movements. And he concluded that the Vedas have 28 stories that basically give people the way to remember the orbit of Jupiter. Right? As 28 takes 28 Earth years for its orbit around the sun. Yes? Am I remembering this right? Yes? No. Well, in any case, so it was like each of the stories represented the stars behind where Jupiter would be that year. Yes?
12.
It's 12?
12 Earth years is 4,333 Earth days. One orbit around.
So how about Saturn?
29.
Saturn's 29?
I think so, because there was a big thing where once you get 29 years old, it's like a
So maybe it's Saturn.
circulating the wheel or kind of reinventing yourself or
29.4 Earth years, yeah.
So maybe that's the one that he meant. And I remember, even though you can remember everything, you can't remember it all the time. You end up having moments of confustication. In any case, so the Odyssey has that same number of stories, and the same animals are significant. And as a result, the argument was, hey, this is actually the Greek version of those stories, right? And as a result, you can picture this as kind of, and the Mediterranean, the Middle Sea, isn't the Mediterranean, it's the stars that Odysseus is traveling around. That's a theory. That's interesting. So there's a lot of things that come to the Greeks that aren't invented by the Greeks, right? You get this Pythagoras. I didn't really talk about him very much, but he's famous for, of course, the Pythagorean theorem. Except that we now know, of course, that the Pythagorean theorem was used by the Egyptians, and they're building all of the pyramids and so on, and they definitely had it written down. So Pythagoras didn't come up with the theorem. He found out about it from his travels or whatever. Yes?
Most of their gods come from Mycenae.
Okay.
Originally.
Well, we could get into what are the gods and everything. This is early science, essentially. It's magical. It must be a god. don't mix these foods. You're irritating the gods if you do. It's actually bacteria, probably, that would be bad for you. And they didn't know about bacteria, but, right? So we're assuming there's all this kind of progress, but they were trying. The angels, what are the angels? Angelus. I remember in Greek class, the minister was an Episcopalian minister, and he had certain things he liked to emphasize. Angelus, the messengers, the angels, right? And there were also the planet pushers. So their choirs are based on how many planets they knew there were, right? So the heavenly choirs, they thought, thanks to Pythagoras, that anything moving is creating noise. And since it's up and it's closer to the heavens, it would have to be heavenly noise. So this is a heavenly choir of angels, all the different types of planets making all the different noises, which had to be musical. So you get all sorts of wonderful things from Pythagoras. But number was his arche, and that's kind of fascinating because 1, as we see with Euclid, 1 has no parts. So if you're thinking, what's the physical substance of 1? Well, maybe air. 2 has more to it, but it's still not enough to be physical substance, so what could it be? Fire. 3 has enough shape now that you could have a physical contact with it. What would it be? Water. 4 now has enough to be earth, etc. So you get this interesting numerology that assigns 1 is really the arche of everything, because you just, in order to get 2, you just add 1 to itself, and you add another, get 3, etc., etc., right? So 1 was the arche for Pythagoras. And that's an interesting tie-in to Euclid is later, by the way. Someone asked me to put this in kind of a better time perspective, and I apologize that I didn't really do that. There's lots of ways to do it. Where's Wikipedia? Oh, I ended up with much more than I wanted there. If you just, use Wikipedia. I've loved Wikipedia from the beginning. A lot of colleagues said, "Oh gosh, that's terrible. It's got no peer review. Anybody can add to it. So how can you trust it, etc." And I thought, this is democracy. I love democracy. I think democracy is great. Wikipedia is democracy. And when you think about it, everybody can add to it, and so that's updated so quickly and so on. At the same time, I like the way it's set up. So not only can you see how Socrates looked, I'm sure that's exactly how he looked, but you can see what time he died, when roughly he was born, 470 BC, died 399 BC. What's BC stand for?
Before conception.
Before Christ. When did Jesus live? Well, this is the funny thing, because theoretically, 0. Anno Domini, right? Year of our Lord. AD stands for Anno Domini, Year of our Lord. But the church, I don't think they had. When did they invent 0? Because I don't think they had 0 when they figured they added this up. Somebody could look up 0 real quick. Yes? When did 0 get invented? No kidding. Oh, that's in the Mayans, though. So that would have been in India. So the church in Rome wouldn't have known. It wouldn't have been. I don't know. When did the church decide? It was Gregorian calendar. So Pope Gregory. This is much later. We'll figure out. Let's start a calendar instead of the Romans had a calendar based on each emperor. So yes,
We had infinity before zero? Huh.
not my fault.
No, I just find that fascinating.
Okay.
That's
A lot of
interesting.
things are fascinating.
I remember, I forgot which of the Greek philosophers, or
Anaximandro?
the one that discovered irrational numbers. Numbers that
Oh,
can't be.
they killed him, didn't they? Yeah.
Maybe.
When he told others about that, they assaulted him, I think. That was really quite painful.
Yeah, a number that can't be represented
Yeah,
in numbers.
Yeah, that's like, whoa, that's like the devil's interval. Don't go there, you know. Although a lot of great music does go there. So, strictly speaking, Anno Domini doesn't have a year zero. So BC ends on year 1 BC, and then Anno Domini begins on year 1 AD, which is supposed to be the calculated date of when Jesus was born. And so, when did Jesus live theoretically? From 0 to roughly 33 AD, right? So that's another one. You can, yes?
The word was incommensurability. And they did throw him overboard during the sea voyage to keep that a secret, what he discovered. Fascinating.
Yeah, it would have been Greek though. So
Greek, yeah.
that word that you just gave me, that's much later,
Yeah.
etc.
There was a Greek word meaning the same thing now.
I don't believe that, actually. I'm a follower of Willard Van Orman Quine and his you can't translate. It's intranslatability thesis, something like that. It's really cool. Okay, so Socrates, notice when he lived, and if we look up Plato, I'll try to stay right in the wiki here so that we can get there. Notice there's 20 years overlap before Socrates died. More than that, actually. A little bit more than that. So that's about what we're looking at. I don't see the person that asked me that yesterday. But in any case, there you go. If you're interested in arranging things sequentially. So, the soul, what's the soul? Let's go to the Meno for a minute and think about how that works. I'll go intro. Hopefully this will take us right to the Meno. So Meno, the name Meno, I think, means unchanging. If you think of Parmenides, one of the so-called pre-Socratics, although he's actually in a Socratic dialogue. Could he have been there? Could he have participated in an argument with Socrates? Very interesting. And that's also one of the later dialogues. I mentioned the middle dialogues. This is where Plato gives you his philosophy. The latter dialogues is where people are criticizing his ideas and he's discovering that no, none of these are working. And so all those dialogues are very frustrating. And Parmenides is one of these. It's supposed to be, para means two, meno, unchanging ideas, right? So two unchanging ideas. You get this conflict because the universe is one, and yet there are parts. How can you do that, right? There's no way. You can have one thing, and yet it's got many parts. That's the one and the many. Problem with the one and the many. It's just a very irritating kind of issue, which won't be resolved until Kant, basically, which is one of the reasons why Kant is absolutely vital to our eventual reaching our contemporary stage, right? But so